on a condo up here in Evergreen that was really nice. And I just took one of my listings off the market for the winter. He was having seller's fatigue, and that's keeping me busy.
Actually, that while we're on that subject, though, let's make sure that we come back and talk about that because obviously we're dealing with. I don't want to say that we're looking at a major shift, and I think that the chatter about that particular subject is a little overblown. But the real estate world is a little different than it was in 16, 17, certainly 15, 14, etc. So let's make sure we circle back to that and what the two of you are dealing with when it comes to how different the real estate market is today than it was at the time. Okay. Annichen, tell us about you.
My name is Annichen Kassel. I'm with Liv Sotheby's International Realty. I've been in the business about 3.5 years, and I just joined Liv Sotheby's in February. Before that, I pretty much was born onto a real estate team, which was great for me because I got to learn all these negotiation skills and experience, and then got to go out on my own and be able to use those to be able to market myself. So I pretty much have wheels will drive. I even do business down in the Springs and a little up in Evergreen, all around Denver. Definitely do most of my business in Aurora and cities surrounding Denver. And I don't really have a specialty. I work a lot with first-time home buyers, obviously, just because my demographic is going to be first-time home buyers, and especially when the market was more at its peak, I was specializing in being able to get home buyers that weren't able to get as competitive, maybe had a loan that wasn't as strong, to be able to sell and get under contract, which obviously proved to be a challenge for a while there. So.
Yep. We lost your audio there, Annichen.
Oh, when did you lose
Oh,
me?
there you go. Now you're back. Just briefly, it may have just been some background noise picking up the being audio directed rather than you. Go ahead.
Well, I think that was it. I was just saying that I don't know when you guys lost me. I work all over Denver, and I really don't have a specific price point. I definitely started out my business with mainly buyers, but weirdly I've been shifting more into the listing side this year. I've had more listings than buyers. So, which I like the balance, of course. We all want, we all want. So, yeah.
Very true. All right. Well, while we're still thinking about it, let's address this, elephant in the room. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk coast to coast, particularly up and down the Front Range of Colorado, about how the real estate market is changing. So, I'm a mortgage originator. I don't study all the NAR stats, all the CAR stats. This is going to be something that the two of you are far greater experts in, especially boots on the ground, seeing what you're seeing, getting feedback from sellers who are not feeling it, as it were. For several years, really, 17, 16, 14, we were dealing with, 4,000 to 5,000 listings at any given time. Our healthy 6-month inventory in the 7 metro counties that make up Denver would be about 25 to 30,000. And now we're looking at 7,000, maybe even reaching or breaching 8,000 listings. So my opinion of it is that we're still looking at a significant housing shortage. We still have a real supply and demand issue on our hands. In my mind, that would still drive real estate values up. I don't think it'll be at the same kind of clip that we've seen in recent years, but if you're getting stagnant sellers and properties sitting on the market, tell our audience what you guys are seeing and what you think the big impacts are for the consumer, certainly for your business, and what you guys think the next 18 months, 36 months might look like for the real estate business, certainly for your businesses.
Want to go first? Go ahead.
No, you take it away.
Okay. I've definitely been seeing more price decreases and longer days on market. I don't think that there's going to be a real estate crash like there was way back when. But I just think the market's normalizing is what's happening. And sorry, I'm really nervous.
Oh, no need to be. Yeah, really, this is, yeah, and literally, Valli, we just want to know what you think. Literally, nobody's holding you to a science. I promise we're not going to look back like Stephen Hawking and go, boy, she was really wrong about the way the world was formed.
I hope not. Yeah, the prices are still, people were listing really high at the beginning of the summer and in the spring, and they could really, and would still find buyers. But then it kind of just came down. People are having to list their houses at more realistic prices, and even the sellers' mindsets, they still think that they can list high and not sit on the market, but that's not the case anymore.
That's a good point. Yeah, and you guys probably have an enormous task ahead of you, certainly this year and in coming years, to make sure that your clients, the consumer's mindset, is different.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I just had this condo, and they wanted to start high. They started at $485, and I said, well, that's, it's summer. Well, if it doesn't sell quickly, then we need to come down. And I shouldn't have let them list that high in the first place, but they just sat there and refused to bring down the price, and finally they had to bring it down, and we finally sold for $452. But it took since the end of June until just last week, which is unusual.
Well, we all know the problem with a people business is the people.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, and hopefully we're not revealing too much information, because obviously in your business, is in my business, privacy is huge. But yeah. What did you think they should have listed that property for?
$457.
Wow. Okay, that's a big gap. And did it eventually sell?
It sold for $452.
Okay. And had they listened to what you were telling them at the time, they would have gotten another $5,000 out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in a much shorter time frame.
And in a much shorter time frame, right? All that while they paid all the holding costs, taxes, insurance. You said it was a condo, so there were HOA dues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an expensive mistake on their part. Okay. What about you, Annichen? What do you think we're seeing right now? What shifts are you experiencing?
Well, actually, it's interesting because I guess my experience has been more of a self-learning process, especially since Valli and I were born into kind of a spoiled market where, the listings kind of sold themselves in a way. I mean, we still market them, but it just was easy. And so, for instance, I had a listing. I had to expire my first listing this year. And it was in what I'd call my farm, a very small, high-end neighborhood of duplexes, mostly ranch style, but not all. And I definitely got really bold with the price. And, I ended up having to adjust. And it just got to the point where, of course, the seller's really disappointing that we're having to adjust so badly. But it was literally when earlier in the year, we just started to see more price reductions. And so I guess it's kind of made me realize that when I come to the listing appointment now, I have to come really prepared with data to back up why we're not going to be able to list it for this bold price, because of course people want to take advantage of this, what's called a crazy market. So yeah, that was a lesson learned, and I've been coming with data, and it's been going well. I mean, people still really want to get their top dollar, but I at least have a conversation saying, if you want that, then we're going to really have to show it top dollar and maybe make some. So, well, there's that, and then I'm trying to use it to my advantage, because I feel like it's kind of turning into a dual market, which, interest rates are still pretty low, and we still have some buying power, and it's a good time for you to leave your first home and use that equity to buy a new one. I think it's just kind of the perfect time to buy and sell, if I'm not wrong. So I really think it can be used as a positive thing, because ultimately the market we were in was more of a challenge for me since I was buyer focused. So I think it's turning into a good thing. I actually just had my first ever listing. My client for that call me, and they're looking to sell, and it's just kind of funny that I'm finally having my first turnover.
Full cycle there, sure.
It was exciting. So yeah, I think it can be a good thing, because people were freaking out when the rates went up a bit. But I'm like, God, I hear all these horror stories about when they were 16%. I just wonder how people were even able to buy back then. So I think if you just put it into perspective, then the market, people won't be so scared away from what's happening to the market. Because I agree with Valli. I don't see it crashing, although I feel like it's a fool's game to predict the market. But I'm hoping it just levels out a bit.
Well, no, and I think you're right. And I think one of the significant differences is that and it wasn't such a big deal up and down the Front Range. If we have a bad year in the Denver real estate market, it means things level off. We don't gain any appreciation. But it was, in such small pockets where values were really hurt. A lot of, what's the area out by the airport? Is that Green Valley Ranch? Yeah. I mean, there were 1 out of 3 homes getting foreclosed on. That's going to have an impact on values, of course. But in general, bad year in the Front Range and the Denver metro area is obviously where things are just level. But on a coast-to-coast basis, I think what we're seeing today is very, very different in the sense that it's a legitimate supply and demand issue. Population is obviously growing. Millennials are a big group, that just a large population. A lot of them want to be homeowners, are home renters, are independent. They're at that age now where we're no longer in school or living with our parents. So I think what we're experiencing is a legitimate housing shortage. Never mind the fact that the rural areas are disappearing. People want to live in more urban areas, so we've got more urban sprawl. We have a higher demand. Whereas 12, 15 years ago, or leading up to 12 years ago, was certainly more of a housing bubble. Again, not such a big deal in our market, but certainly coast to coast. Look at places like Miami, Phoenix, Detroit, Las Vegas. Was a big one. A lot of Southern California. There was an actual housing bubble, and I don't think that's what we're experiencing right now. I think this is still a legitimate supply and demand issue. So I do agree with you. I think we're seeing different things. I think we're going to have a different reaction as a result.
We are seeing an increase in new listings. I think in September it went up by like 2%. In the Denver metro area, but there's still not enough inventory.
Do you think there will be?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly.
I mean, the chasm of what would be considered a 6-month inventory in the metro area versus where we're at is big. It's 20,000 properties big.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we've built a lot of apartment buildings that were built with the eventual ability to condominiumize. They're all on separate water, gas meters, etc. But the rental market is a cash cow. I can't see building an apartment building and wanting to go through the headache and rigmarole of condominiumizing it now while it's making such great rental income. So it's going to be a long time before we have those properties hitting the market. Our single family home builders learned a very expensive and valuable lesson a dozen years ago. So they've managed to hold on to the reins of how big they want to be, how fast they want to build. Obviously, the cost of land, materials, labor is still through the roof, so we're seeing some significant issues there as well. But the builders have kept their development in check because we have such bizarre builder defect laws on the books in Colorado. We're not seeing a lot of condos and townhomes. The high density just increases a higher liability, so we're not building a lot of that. So how long does this continue? Do we see a buyer's market again any day soon?
I think it's just going to balance out. I don't think it'll be a true buyer's market anytime soon,
Okay.
in my opinion.
At least not as strong as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that we just kind of ride this dual market for as long as possible, you know. I would personally prefer that than any kind of seller or buyer market. I have noticed just certain things happening. For instance, because they're making so many apartment buildings, not so much single families, that I feel like condo rentals are kind of going down as opposed to single family rentals. Makes me wish I got a single family as my first home instead of a condo, because I've just kind of noticed my rental prices going down. So certain weird things are happening, but yeah, I'm not so sure we're going to head into a buyer's market, especially with the amount of jobs we're supposedly bringing here. I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and she said that the kinds of jobs they're trying to bring here require a second master's degree, and so it's even going to maybe drive up our prices a bit, hopefully. I don't know if that will necessarily hold the market or not, but I'm also not sure what rumors are true on what companies are coming here, but it sounds like there are quite a few. So I don't think that Denver is in trouble of anything. Knock on wood.
Indeed. Okay. And Denver's never really been in trouble, even when the economy has been in trouble, when the real estate market has been in trouble. Fortunately for us, we've been relatively immune to it. So I think that if we're getting into a trend where we're going to see any kind of similarities as to yesterdecade, what we saw a dozen years ago, I think we've been able to remain relatively immune to it. All right, so we know that the market is changing a little. We know that interest rates are up, that home prices are slowing. I don't want to say that they're leveling off, because I don't think that that's accurate. So how does that change what you guys want to do in marketing to sellers, in marketing to buyers? Is there one that you would prefer over the other? I mean, in a seller's market, do we prefer listings? Do we prefer buyers? Do we like the activity of people making multiple offers? Do we like the other side of that activity and having to receive and review multiple offers? And how does that scope change for you guys going forward as this market continues to change a little bit?
Want me to go ahead?
Oh, sure, I'll go. Well, obviously, I think I would prefer to have more sellers than buyers, only because I think it's pretty true that listings bring you more business. For every listing, you should get at least 2 more clients, whether it's buyers from an open house or whether you're bringing the buyer to the table. So I think there's just more opportunity there to get more business. And honestly, even if the market changes a bit, I think as long as you're able to convince them to price it well, you're still in good shape. I mean, that's how demand works, is you want to give them as much market exposure as possible by getting them in the price bracket that will bring a lot of buyers. So yeah, I would say I'd prefer sellers, but I'll take whatever I can get.
And how does it change? How does your relationship with a client, how does your relationship with a prospect differ as the market shifts?
Valli, do you want to take that one?
How does, it just, last summer when people were making, I would show somebody 13 houses in one day, and they would write 3 or 4 offers and not get a single one of them accepted. It was really frustrating. And I felt really bad for the buyers that were having to deal with that. And sellers, we just need to definitely change the way we're promoting our services for the buyers and sellers in this different market, and just kind of it's more realistic now. It's just, gosh.
And sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's,
And I noticed that with my listings since they were flying off the shelves in 3 days, I almost didn't have time to do much marketing. So now I really have to kind of sit down and get strategic, which is fine, but it's just that's something that I really never had to actually deal with. It was mostly just get great photography, make a flyer, do an open house, and then boom, I'm under contract.
and it's gone, yeah.
That's still happening in in my more modest price ranges, but I definitely think it's gonna be even more important that you have to really, really be strategic with marketing. And yeah, like you were saying, for the buyers, I've noticed just gradually, and I work with a lot of 350 and under, and I used to have to say, just to set expectations, it's really unlikely that we're going to be able to find a single family home under this under 350, and just because the prices have gone up so high, the values, and if we do, I mean, we might be looking at 20,000-30,000 over asking, and you might have to sacrifice a lot. And that's what was painful for me, is the only way to get them under contract was to bring cash to the closing table for appraisal gap. And that was just so painful to watch, people have to do whatever and now I'm kind of able to say we might get competitive depending on on the home, and if it's highly desired and if it's priced really low, but it's not gonna be as bad. And it's kind of nice to be able to say that. So it's a lot easier. You're right. I work with a lot of BA buyers too, and the last 3 I've had have gone under contract on the first offer they've made, which was really, really hard to do.
That's a big deal. Good for you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What about you, Valli? What do you think? How does, obviously I think that Annichen nails it on the head. If we're going to act heavily as listing agents, if we're going to work on the sell side, I think the marketing of the actual property, marketing the sale of the home is going to be a different animal. It's going to change. It's going to have to be more proactive. And that's just true anytime the real estate markets start to balance out. This is definitely unique that way. I would definitely consider it a seller's market, considering on the inventory, just considering the inventory numbers. And yet you're having to put those tasks, those skills, those exercises into place much earlier than if we had 35,000 properties available in what would be a healthy 6 months, 25,000 market. So what changes for you guys in attracting more buyers and sellers?
Well, as far as I definitely, as far as sellers go, I'm spending a lot more money on marketing in a lot more creative ways than I was before. Before you just put it in the MLS, had an open house, and like Annichen said, it would just be gone, and now they're just kind of sitting there. And for buyers, it's just easier. There's not the panic now, and it's a little more relaxed to work with them. And yeah, I think that Facebook is a really great way to keep in touch with your buyers and sellers, and a great marketing tool.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah.
I think it's more important now to inform both buyers and sellers separately of because people just whenever I say I'm in real estate and they ask about the market, they just assume it's crazy, it's the highest it's ever been. But I think if you just have that conversation with them and tell them in more detail what the market's actually doing, it will appeal to both sellers and buyers right now. So just kind of encouraging buyers not to be scared to get into this market now, just to kind of show them what it's like to buy a home now with the interest rates as opposed to waiting, because I feel like a lot of that's what a lot of my buyers are doing. They're like, I want to buy, but I'm going to wait. And so I'm just kind of trying to get in front of that and say, well, here's why you should buy now. So
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea, and that's exactly the kind of content that the two of you are looking for, and of course what our audience is looking for as well. So that's really well said. Thank you. What about you, Valli? How does this change for you? What do you envision for 2019 that would be different than say 2017? We'll let 18 act as that buffer, where you're going to change your MO in attracting more buyers, more sellers, generating more leads?
I'm kind of slowing down right now. The typical seasonal slowdown, but it's just kind of starting to tick back up again. I think I just need to keep marketing myself and talking to people and making sure that I know the information that would be pertinent to them, whether they're a buyer or seller. I'm really active in our Chamber of Commerce up here, and I attend every networking opportunity that I'm able. Just keep getting the word out that it's still a good time to buy and it's still a good time to sell, and that now is better than later. 2019, I hope to have a really strong year. I've balanced out more to buyers and sellers now as well. So I don't know. I just hope we have more inventory and that it stays easy for the buyer, but that our sellers can still sell quickly too.
Do you think that's where we're at? Do you think that this has gotten easier for the buyer while the seller is still able to maximize what they're getting for their property?
Yeah, I don't think prices they're still going to keep going up, just more gradually than they have been. Over the last September, July, August, and September, there were price decreases for those 3 months in a row, but the values are still going up. So sellers are just going to have to be more realistic, and you're just going to have to convince them where their bracket of value is to bring more buyers. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, no, and I think, don't get me wrong, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think there are a couple of inherent issues on both sides of our industries where the consumer has been lulled into an unrealistic expectation. On my side, interest rates have been so ridiculously low for so long that it's hard to break out of that cycle. And I remember my parents having a mortgage at like prime plus 2. And prime plus 2 is a very good interest rate, but that would have been 19.5% at the time. Now, granted, the houses were $30,000, not $300,000 or in excess of that here in our market. But that's certainly part of it. I think on the flip side, for the real estate side, particularly when it comes to sellers, is that what defines a healthy inventory, what defines a healthy, balanced real estate market historically, regardless of what city, what town, what region, is 6 months. That people should expect historically through the entire history of buying and selling real estate in America, that people should expect for a home to be on the market for 6 months. That's why we define a healthy inventory as a 6-month inventory. And the consumer at this point, wow, if their property is on the market for 6 weeks, we have panic and the hellfire and brimstone and pigs are flying and cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. So it's definitely a very different animal for you guys to have to deal with right now. How do you manage those expectations? How do you deal with your clients, both buyers and sellers, that look, this is what is normal. Just because you've never experienced it doesn't mean your situation is abnormal.
Take, for instance, my listing that I put on in the early spring. It was a $1 million home. Um, we had a lot of showings. He just wouldn't come down in his price, and I just let it expire. I took it off and then let it expire, but he wants to come back on the spring in 2019 for the same price. Sorry, you cannot do that. You're not going to get that price anymore. So I just keep sending him the homes that are similar that are selling and trying to show him, but he's a little stubborn. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's frustrating. That's for sure.
That's really interesting. So despite the real estate shortage, the supply and demand issue, the values continuing to go up, although maybe not at the pace that we've seen in recent years. You suspect that this particular consumer is going to have a difficult time selling a home next year in the spring for the same amount, let alone more, the same amount as what he attempted to sell it for this year.
Yeah, he listed it a little higher than he should have, and he thought he could get it really quickly, right out the gate. And that price range is not as fluid as lower, like under 600. And so it's typically longer, days on market longer. But he just, we didn't get somebody right at the beginning of the listing, and then there it sat.
I think that fluidity, wherever that price point happens to break, and I do agree with you, I think it's right around 600,000, maybe a little under, is actually our responsibility. That's our liability, not yours. Obviously, the conforming and conventional lending guidelines kind of put a cap right in that arena, and then we start jumping into high balance, into jumbo lending, so on and so forth. I actually think that's my industry screwing yours up.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, out of my control. But yeah, I do think that if a consumer can put a significant amount of money down, even let's say 20%, and still stay within a conforming price range, $500,000 loan or so, then I think we're seeing better activity in those markets falling below that than in the ones that are above it. Interest rates are higher, terms aren't as attractive, down payments are greater, qualifications are significantly higher. I think that's really I think that's what defines that speedy real estate market with the slower real estate market, just historically, is where those lending guidelines fall. So I take full responsibility, apologizing on behalf of an entire industry to an entire industry that we aren't quite balanced yet with one another, but we're getting better.
Yes.
And what about you, Annichen? I mean, where does this change for, not necessarily change for you, although I do want you to tell us what you're seeing your next year look like, but how does it change with how you manage expectations with buyers and sellers?
Well, yeah, kind of like I touched on earlier, it's just really, really important to bring the data because you can kind of take the blame off you. Messenger, this is what your neighborhood is telling us, and just kind of put it into very real terms for them. So I think it's easy for us to forget that they don't speak real estate, so we can just ramble on as much as we want, but it's really just important to lay it out and say, look, here is what this property sold for. It sold in 1 week, and it's because it was priced really well and had these upgrades, whereas this one was priced around where you were hoping, but it's still sitting, and ultimately it's going to lose its value if we price it this way. That's kind of always the script I use, is that just those first 10 days on the market are so important in order to get your maximum market exposure. And if we don't price it right, then we're going to lose that window, and you're probably going to end up taking home less than what you wanted. And it's about what you net ultimately. And the longer it's on the market, the lower your value gets. So just kind of almost spinning it in a way, saying pricing it at this price will net you more. So that's just kind of what I do: data and scripts.
Well, and I think that kind of activity up front is important. I mean, Valli made an attempt with her client selling that condo. He thought he would get tens of thousands more than he did. And had he listened to her in the first place, he would have gotten at least 10,000 more than he did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a gap there. That's a pretty significant chasm of dollars. And obviously, we need to make sure that the consumer knows that this is your career. This is your gig. You guys are constantly studying what goes on in the market, home prices, neighborhood statistics, so on and so forth. So, yeah, I know that a lot of this is horse to water, that you can lead them there, but you can't get them to drink. But yeah, that I would say that that's going to become more and more important and hopefully more prevalent, that you guys can get your clients to listen to what you're telling them. I don't know that that really changes with the market. You're just always going to have to suffer with that, unfortunately. So tell us about these clients, the ones that do listen, the ones that don't listen. Where do they come from? Is the majority of your business repeat and referral? Are we participating with any lead programs? Do you do mailers? Do you do email blasts? Do you write a blog? Tell us about how you guys focus on generating your business.
Do you want to go or me?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'd say I'm at least about 80% fear-based. So most of the people that I work with, I either know or are friends of friends or something of that nature. Although I would say some of them as well are in that specific neighborhood I was talking about, just I guess in a sense referral business, or just they've seen me. It's such a small neighborhood that it's hard to miss me when I'm doing open houses there all the time, and they see me running up a hill with high heels on. So
That's funny.
yeah. It's obviously impressive to run in heels. That's why I get on my business. So yeah, I'd say those are the two main reasons. And what I've noticed that I've had to do in light of this market change is, well, I saw something recently or learned something recently that said that input is much more important than output when it comes to social media. And that's something I haven't really done much of. And so I'm really trying to focus on that. And by that, I mean using it to be able to see, and this is something I learned, this isn't, I didn't invent this or think of this, pain and pleasure, to see when people are having life changes, whether it's, they're getting married, having babies, or, they had a death in the family. And so I just think it's very important, and even more important now, to just stay in touch with people. And like Valli said, it's such a powerful tool, Facebook and Instagram, social media. And so I also get, invites all the time on there to go to baby showers. And it's easy to not, to reject those when I was, really busy. And I shouldn't have. I should have still just made time, but better late than never. So I'm just trying to really be social and keep in touch, because I am so fear-based that, I would rather do, I would rather nurture what I know works than, for instance, I don't do cold calls, just because I realized that I was miserable when I was doing cold calls. And to each his own. I just hated my life, waking up every day and just picking up the phone and asking if you want to buy, sell, or invest in real. I hated that. And so I'd rather just keep in touch with my sphere by calling them, and just an easy phone call. So I think I'm lucky in that sense, because I find that to be, for me, the easiest way to maintain my business is just to keep in touch with people. I don't do a lot of marketing, passive marketing. Most of it is social media based.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm heavily sphere-based as well. Most of my business comes from my peers and from my relationships at the Chamber of Commerce and at the Evergreen Elks Lodge, and just from everybody I know. And I feel like I don't cold call either. I hate that. It's terrible. I do need to get better at door knocking, even in my neighborhood. That's for next year. Yeah, marketing. As far as marketing goes, if you run an ad in our Explore Evergreen directory and on our map, we have an area map that goes out for the tourists, and I find both of those things just keep me present mind to everyone up here. I also advertise in the Serenity magazine. It's this magazine, another magazine we have up here, and some of the special issues in the local newspaper. But I try to, really focus more heavily on just keeping in touch with everybody I know and social media. I have Bergen Peak Realty page, Valli Crockett of Bergen Peak Realty, and I'm an admin on the Evergreen Chamber page. So I'm always on the Facebook.
And don't get me wrong, I'm obviously a big proponent. And the teaching and coaching and that kind of stuff we teach a lot about Facebook and comment farming and controlling groups and third-party postings and those kinds of things. So, I'm in big support of that kind of activity. I think that there's a big difference in what you guys are doing in the sense that, Valli, your work is really hyper-local. I mean, you really have kind of a pinpoint target of Evergreen in a slight surrounding area, which makes your marketing tactics, your techniques, your prospecting different than a lot of other agents.
Yeah, it's just really important that I go to all the chamber functions and that I make my rounds around town and say hello to everybody and, just keep in front of everyone so they don't forget me. Because my company, it's just my partner and I, and she founded Bergen Peak Realty in the early 2000s, and she's getting ready to retire, and she has a rich referral business, and she doesn't do any advertising, and so it's a different animal for me. So if I want to succeed, I have to really promote myself. And I'm competing against Liv Sotheby's and Berkshire Hathaway and RE/MAX. And in Evergreen, there are over 500 real estate professionals, and there are 115 houses for sale.
So those numbers jive with what goes on in the metro area. There's something like 20,000 plus real estate agents in the 7 metro counties and 7,000 properties for sale. So those numbers actually translate pretty well.
Yeah. So I just try to promote myself locally as much as I can.
Good. Annichen, you're obviously really big on your sphere. You want to spend a lot of 2019 building deeper relationships, staying more top of mind. And neither of you is wrong. There's no right or wrong to this because everybody's different. I love the phone. I'm not going to cold call, but I do love picking up the phone and furthering relationships that way. I do it literally hundreds of times a week. I make phone calls that are not transactional related just to do both of those things. Stay top of mind, build deeper relationships, hyper focus who my clientele are and should be, those kinds of things. So all I would ever recommend to a real estate agent who's operating with any idea of their marketing, their tactics, their prospecting techniques, whatever the case may be, that you're constant and consistent. There's no right or wrong. If you want to pick up the phone and make phone calls, then it's the right thing to do. If you want to go knock on doors, then it's the right thing to do. You just have to always do it and keep doing it and be constant and consistent about it. So, and I think that those are really big pieces of the puzzle. And I know that two of you are ridiculously smart when it comes to this stuff. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We're really telling our audience more than anybody. You know what works. You know what you like to do. You know the things that make you money. You know there are going to be things that you're not going to like that aren't going to make you money. We can talk about how to slough off some of those tasks, although that's probably another live show. But a lot of your brethren, a lot of my brethren, just need a reminder. They know what to do, they're just not doing it. So I think that when it comes to lead generation, that's important. There's no right or wrong as long as you're doing the work.
I liked your Friday rinse and repeat.
Kelly, that's right. That was the subject of last week's video blog for agents, is that I don't care what you're doing. Just make sure you're constant and consistent about it. For those of you that are watching, or those of you that will watch as this video gets saved and stored, you can't decide you're going to do door knocking, that this is a great idea, a great concept for you. It works for Valli. Let's take advantage and see how it goes, and go knock on doors a Saturday or 2 or 3 and then quit doing it. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to get results out of it like that. You have to be constant and consistent. Go do it every day. Go do it every weekend. Go do it all year long and see what kind of results you get, because doing it for a few hours on 3 different days is not going to provide you the results that you need for the time that you're spending doing those kinds of tasks.
Right.
What you were saying about calling on the phone, I guess I just wanted to say for any millennial agents that are watching, I feel like I'm kind of lucky being a millennial and having the power of the phone with my clients in my sphere, because it helps me stand out, because honestly, a lot of the times we don't pick up the phone, we text or a Facebook message. And so when I call my friends, my own demographic, they're kind of like, okay, is she calling me on purpose? Is this a butt dial? And so, it's almost in a way special. And then honestly, when I work with, kind of an older demographic, it does not take much for me to impress them when I'm working with them, because I just pick up the phone, or I answer the phone and call instead of texting. And it's just, man, it's not rocket science. It's really easy to just to do that and stand out, just because that's a dying art, just like anything. Same as writing letters and note cards. So I do that as well. I write note cards just because that's something that people don't do a lot.
Now, what's old is new again.
Mm-hmm.
No question. And I do want to touch on a point for our audience that Annichen brought up there that is a very big deal. The kinds of things that we're doing here, this Zoom meeting, a live broadcast, we're streaming through an additional piece of technology. These are the kinds of things. And by the way, none of this cost any of us a dime for those of you that are watching. So we're doing some really unique marketing, as it were, social media marketing, as it were, without spending any money. So for those of you that have been in this game for a while, certainly a lot longer than our guests today, you're used to doing things like spending a lot of money on your bus benches and on your grocery carts and in the newspaper and these kinds of things. And these ladies that you're seeing in our broadcast today are crushing it through things like Facebook and Instagram and being involved in the community, things that don't cost them a dime. And they're taking market share away from those of you that have been doing this for decades, because you're not ramping up to the level where they're able to do things technologically, strictly from their phone, without spending any more money on things like bus benches and grocery carts. Okay, so for those of you that are watching that are reluctant, the technology's not going away. It's not going anywhere. You guys you've got to get up to speed if you want to compete in this arena. Okay, it's a big deal for a lot of you old dogs, and I hate to use that term. And don't get me wrong, I'm anti-old dog. The next time a real estate agent says to me, "Well, I've been doing this for 30 years," I'm going to tell them, that's the problem. You're still doing it like you did 30 years ago. This is why you suck at it. Okay, so we're getting some comments, and Scott, good morning, Scott, actually had something. I want to shift gears a little bit here in the little bit of time we have left, because he brought up a really good point, and this will be cool discussion from both sides of our fence. What do you guys think the future holds with Zillow's play in the marketplace? Oh, look at everybody get a look on their face of who. Just so you guys know, it's a really big topic of conversation in my industry this week. Zillow released their mortgage platform. So Zillow is now a competitor of mine. I am definitely pro Zillow from a data standpoint. They have a robust amount of data, and they're getting it from wonderful and a great number of sources, MLSs and county records, and your activity and my activity and real estate activity. The data is robust. What I abhor is watching real estate agents and mortgage lenders fork out tons of cash to eventually fuel their own demise. So I've got great things to say about Zillow, and I've got horrible things to say about Zillow. Why don't the two of you tell us, and Scott, thank you for bringing up the question, why don't the two of you tell us what you see, what you predict, where you play in that space, and what you would and wouldn't do?
Well, this is maybe kind of a stretching this question a little bit further, but I read an article about artificial intelligence and what kind of jobs it's going to push out. And we were one of them, so that was a really fun article to read. So I think it's just important to, maintain relationships and kind of, market yourself and showcase why it's more important to work with a professional, with, more intimately and kind of just, I don't know, why it helps to have a person that you know and that knows the market work with you, as opposed to some big corporation like Zillow. Because that is a fear that because everything's going on the path of technology, is that our job is going to be rendered unnecessary. But I think that can be applied to anything, where as long as you kind of voice your importance of why it's more what kind of value I bring to the table in my value proposition, then you can get ahead of that. What about you, Valli?
Well, when I first started doing real estate, I would just cringe when people would say Zillow. Like, well, Zillow says my house is worth this much.
Oh, jeez.
And it took me a long time to just embrace Zillow in the fact that I would say, okay, well, that's a good starting point. There is a lot of good information that you can get from the Zillow website, but they've also just rolled out their Zillow offers platform, where they'll just
here locally. They've been doing it in a few cities over the course of this year, but yes, that is brand new to Denver.
Yeah. But I don't think that you can ever, there are other platforms that are like the Zillow offers platform, and I've read some reviews by people who've tried it, and it's supposed to be really easy and simple, but it turns out that it's just, you have to deal with so many different people. You don't just have your one agent, that you end up getting less money and not have the personal touch that you would get. So you don't get as much money for your house, and you don't get the customer service that you deserve, pretty much.
Well, and I think that that's important. Well, I want to preface this by saying I want you guys to understand that I think my coffin is closing faster than yours. If we look at things like what Zillow is doing in mortgage and the Rocket, and I know that that'll make you guys cringe too, that if you see a client getting their loan from Quicken, I know you get a little, maybe a little Forrest Whitaker eye out of that. But, and again, as our audience goes, I want you guys to understand the technology is not going away. We're grasping that. I need for you guys to do that too. But a lot of this, 90+% of it, maybe 98% of it, requires a human. Okay, it requires a very personal interaction. Now, granted, in the mortgage space, if I am the $500,000 buyer and I'm putting $100,000 down and I have a 780 credit score and I'm a W-2 employee and it's very, very vanilla in this tiny little box, I see what Quicken does. I see what the Rocket does, and I respect it. I give Quicken an ID and a login, a password for the IRS, and they can go get all my tax stuff. And I give them the login and ID for my bank, and they can go get all my bank statement stuff. And I give them my login and my ID for my employer, and they can go get all my payroll stuff. So in essence, it's a combination of myself and a computer processing my own mortgage that way. But when it comes down to it, it is dollars and cents. Okay, and nobody wants a mortgage. They want the house. The mortgage is the vehicle that gets them there, but you never say, oh, gosh, can I have $500,000 in debt, please? Nobody ever does that, right? They want the house. Now, the thing about your business that's very, very different than mine is where I get to wear blinders and watch out for what's best for people's dollars. Nothing else. That's my job. You guys are making real significant personal connections with people whose dogs are going to play in that backyard, whose kids are going to trick or treat up and down that block. So there's a lot more emotional and psychological input, feedback that you're getting from clients that we're not, because we just have to watch out for what's best for their dollars, whereas they're making significant emotional decisions on the aspect that you have to deal with. So I don't think you can remove the human involvement, the human interaction, the emotional and psychological stability that the real estate agent relationship brings to the table all that quickly. I think that that's such an important piece of the puzzle that it's going to remain for a long, long time. I don't see that that's going to expire with technology anytime soon. You don't cuddle with a robot, that kind of thing. It's just that human interaction piece on your side is huge.
It used to be ever, and the robots turn on us and take over the world.
Well, but only to protect us from harming ourselves. Again, like the consumer who thought he could get 30 grand more for his house and ended up eating 40 grand out of it because he wouldn't listen to his real estate agent. So maybe there is that 1 out of 100 where that will benefit. But thank you. I certainly did want to get your input on what you see as that future. So we've been streaming for an hour, and I do want to cover one more thing that I find most important in these videos. I really want for you guys to put out there who you are, how to reach you. If consumers, if colleagues, if other lenders, if other agents have questions, I really want to do it. And after watching the two of you go back and forth, do you want to go first? No, do you want to go first? We're just going to do it alphabetically. And Annichen, give us all the highlights. Again, who you are, your company, how we can reach you, what the best way to reach you is. Obviously, we know you love text and Facebook Messenger.
I prefer carrier pigeon.
And actually, while we're on that note, and we probably all understand this, but the audience probably doesn't. Just one quick nugget for the entire audience. I want you guys to know that the most recent significant change to the Facebook algorithm includes that instant messenger, that direct messenger system. So if you want to have conversations with potential leads, clients, advocates that way, then they will see more of what you're putting out on Facebook in their newsfeed. So that's this month's nugget. So use that Facebook Messenger system. All right, Annichen, hit us.
Well, then I'd say the easiest way to contact me is through direct message. But yeah, my name's Annichen Kassel. I'm with Sotheby's International Realty. And wait, is that all you wanted? My name and then how to contact me?
Well, and who you're with, and yeah, give us all the highlights, because again, I think one of the things that we all know and respect is that we want to communicate with our clients however they want to communicate with us. You want to text us? Great. You want to use Facebook Messenger? Fantastic. You want to email? Okay. I don't have a carrier pigeon. I can't send a fax because of where I live in 2018. But give us all the highlights so that these consumers can reach you in whatever method they want.
Okay. So yeah, my name's Annichen Kassel. I'm with Sotheby's International Realty. I'm based out of Denver, but I work pretty much all over, all the way down to the Springs and Aurora, Parker, everywhere. So, and you can I am unfortunately attached to my phone, so you can really reach me anyway. Facebook is good. Instagram, I'm at Annipug, ANNIPUG. We've got a really cute one-eyed pug that you can check out on there. And by phone as well. I think that our information is up somewhere, isn't it?
Well, anybody who's watching the video will be able to connect with you on Facebook. So they'll see your name, how it's spelled, those kinds of things. But yeah, I would say cell phone number, email address, these are going to be good things to put out there, assuming that data is not readily available on your Facebook page. If it's not, we're going to talk. We're going to have a stern lecture. Don't be hiding from the consumer. Don't be hiding from your Facebook audience. But yeah, that's perfect.
I've been having trouble changing my email, but my phone number is 303-249-7148. And my email is akassel@livsir.com.
Cool. Valli?
My name is Valli Crockett. I'm a realtor and certified mountain area specialist with Bergen Peak Realty in Evergreen, Colorado. I also have worked as far north as Drake, as far south as Hartselle, out to Parker, and up to Georgetown. So I have a pretty broad range. I can be reached at 303-956-2437 or vallicrockett@yahoo.com, and just VALLICROCKETT. Also on Facebook, and I also have my phone in my hand pretty much 90% of the time. So call, text. I do have a fax number because I have an elderly client in Florida, and he can only fax.
And we can receive them, we just can't send them.
I can send them.
Wow.
No. So,
all right, so there's going to be a mad rush on your office of everybody who needs to fax something now. It's better than the UPS store.
Yes. $1 a page.
$1 a page. That's probably fair market. All right. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time. I know that that's not easy to do when you're leading a busy real estate agent lifestyle on a Monday morning. So I do greatly appreciate it. And for those of you that are watching live, that will watch as the video gets posted, please understand that both Valli and Annichen are very skilled real estate agents in a couple of arenas. Certainly their real estate practices, and the statistics don't lie about that, but we would not have asked them to be guests on our show if we didn't think that their social media game was on par. So if you guys want to inquire with them about those kinds of things, I would certainly recommend that you do it. And of course, if you guys have any questions for myself or for Kelly, who has obviously just been watching all day today, Kelly, we didn't even make you chime in on anything. Our contact info. That's okay. Our contact information is on the left. I don't know if the camera reverses that. I think it's on the left. So again, thank you all for watching, present and future. And Valli, Annichen, thank you so much for the time. The feedback is invaluable, and we will see all of you soon.
Thank you,
Adam.
So thanks, guys. I did end the live stream, so now you're actually safe to say anything that wouldn't be viewed. But yeah, that was fantastic. I think the two of you are going to have really cool things going on in 2019.
Thanks. It was fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I liked it.
A little nerve-wracking.
Are you guys both on Instagram?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Valli, are you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, but I'm not very good at Instagram, but don't tell anyone that.
Okay.
Annichen, what's yours? ANN Pug?
ANNI Pug. Ani Pug.
Ani Pug. That's awesome.
Got it.
Ani, what's the pug's name?
Roxanne.
Roxanne. I love it.
It's
Valli,
funny.
what's yours?
I think it's Bergen Peak Realty.
Yeah, when I first got on Instagram, I didn't know what to title it or what my tag should be, and so my nickname was always Ani, and I like pugs, so I said Ani Pug, and now all my friends call me that. So I inadvertently got a new nickname, Ani Pug.
Then roll with it. That's brilliant type of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how this went. I was combing through Facebook, and it was probably a real estate agent who asked me to like their business page. So, and business pages in Facebook are virtually worthless now because of those significant algorithm changes in the first half of this year that Facebook did. Well, one they did, and then the second one they kind of had to do after those Senate committee hearings. And in her personal page description, it was the stuff that we all kind of poke fun at. I'm a vegan, CrossFitter, whatever. And it occurred to me then, while that wouldn't necessarily be the tribe that I would find, get in a tribe. Be in a tribe. Do the pug tribe.
And the pizza tribe.
Oh, that's the best tribe. Well, the pizza and taco tribes are obviously very, very competitive that way, but yes.
Well, that's so true. That's what I kind of realized. But it was really at first just posting what I love, which is bugs and pizza, and then people started bringing that up to me when I run into them. Like, oh, you love pizza, huh? Or what was that place that you went to? So then I was just like, apparently people like when I talk about pizza. So I just kept doing it. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Relatable and professional, but just the idea is to get people to, be interested in you and what you do, and so it's enough.
Yeah. Well, again, all you guys have to do is let people know who you are, meaning what you're about. Are you into pugs? Are you an evergreen? Whatever the case may be. And then, of course, which is much easier to do, is let people know what you do. And you buy and sell real estate. You help people buy and sell real estate. So, yeah, that part of it's easy. But, yeah, find a tribe, whether it's pugs or evergreen or tacos or pizza, and, yeah, roll with it. So I think that's great stuff.
Well, thanks again. This is a great experience.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and stay tuned. Maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.